Afternoon, everyone. I hope my voice is audible and screen is visible. So I'll go ahead then, assuming it is visible and audible. So we started the discussion on semaphore in the last class. We said that semaphore is basically useful in the sense it is a single replacement for both locks and condition variables. Locks did not had a property to basically wait on a particular condition. Locks only were used for mutual exclusion, whereas condition variables did not have any explicit state. We needed an explicit state variable to basically describe our conditions. So semaphore basically is kind of a single replacement for all that, because it has an internal state. It can track integer values with using that state variable. And so we initialize, whenever we declare a semaphore variable, we initialize it with some initial value, and it has two operations associated with it. One is wait operation, which basically waits till the values it waits until value of semaphore is greater than 0. So if it is 0 or negative, it will be basically put to sleep. Else it will return from the wait function, and before returning it will decrement the state of the semaphore value by 1. And in the post operation, basically it does the opposite thing. It will increment the semaphore value by 1, and then if one or more threads are waiting on the queue, it will wake one of them. So that depends on how initialization is done, what attributes are specified. But important thing is that these wait and post operations are implemented in such a way that they are done in an atomic fashion. So you don't have to worry about critical section or data race within that. So the power of semaphore could be realized with this example we discussed yesterday. The parent-child ordering problem, where we use condition variable, lock, and the state variable. We use three things in order to implement that ordering, and now all that thing can be done by just using one semaphore variable s. And if we can initialize it with proper value, in this case it will be initialized with 0, because parent must wait until child actually does a post operation. So if it has to wait, then the value should be 0, because it for waiting the condition is it should be less than equal to 0. So with 0, parent has to wait unless the child runs and does a post operation. If child happens to run earlier, then automatically post will increase the value of 0 to 1, and then when parent comes, it won't wait because the semaphore value is 1. So just using one semaphore wait and post operation, you can replace this entire code of lock and state variable and condition variable. So that is power of semaphore, and that is what we were claiming, that it is equally powerful to locks plus condition variable. However, it is not necessary that you should always use semaphore. Sometimes it may be more elegant to use locks and condition variables. That depends on the condition that you have to impose. Sometimes it may be more naturally to think in terms of condition variables and locks. For some, it may be easy to think in terms of semaphore, but you can do it either way. It's not hard and fast that you have to choose one or the other. So we tried to show some things that these are equivalent. That is, you can make a lock with a semaphore, you can make a condition variable with a semaphore, and you can make a semaphore using locks and condition variable. This just to show that they are equivalent. Otherwise, you will never use semaphore to implement locks or to implement condition variable. You may use locks and condition variable to implement semaphore, because that is a more advanced primitive than locks. Okay, so yesterday we discussed how we can make a lock. Lock was if you want to make variable in the and purpose wait, and for unlocking purpose just call post on that, and the value that you will initialize this semaphore will be 1. because one of the threads should be allowed to grab lock as soon as lock is declared. So the general rule of thumb was basically, sometimes when you are using this semaphore as a lock, you call it as a binary semaphore. In some of the books, it is called binary semaphore when you use semaphore as a lock. But the general rule for semaphore, because initialization is very important for semaphore, so just a general rule of thumb to keep in mind is that how to initialize the semaphore value. You should consider how many number of resources you are willing to give away immediately after initialization. So in this case, for example, for locking purpose, at least you want to allow one thread to acquire the lock. So one thread can be you are willing to give away. So that's why you initialize it with one. Whereas in the previous case of parent-child ordering, you did not want parent to run even once unless there was a post operation. So therefore you initialize it with 0. So that is the general rule of thumb you should keep in mind for deciding how you will initialize semaphore variable. Now let us say if you have to build semaphore using lock and condition variable, what do you think, what data structure should be there in this data structure? Let us say we want to define a data structure for semaphore. What all things we need to have? So we will need to have a lock variable as well as a condition variable. And any other thing do you think we need to have? We need to have a lock variable. We need to have a condition variable. And any other thing? You need to have a state variable because semaphore has a value also. So you will need to have an integer value also. So you will need an integer value. You will need a condition variable as well as a lock variable. And you can initialize them. So whatever value that user passes, you will initialize that with the internal value, and you will lock and condition variable according to the standard attributes. That way you can initialize. You can initialize it statically using the pthread underscore static initializer, or you can initialize using the dynamic function by calling a function during runtime. Now, if you have to implement the wait and post operation, what thing will go here? So remember what wait does. Wait has to wait function will cause the thread to wait until value is greater than 0. And then if not, then it will decrement the value and then exit. So what should be written in wait? What logic should be there in this wait? I hope people are following whatever I was saying till now. If not, please ask your doubt. Maybe I'll make it simpler then. So you have to wait. So we will wait until the value of the semaphore is less than equal to 0. Only when it is greater than 0, then it does not have to wait. So for waiting, you have to somehow basically put yourself to sleep. Else you will have to, if this condition is not true, basically you will decrement the value by 1 and then move out. But you need to write something so that it happens atomically. So how will you wait yourself, and what thing you need to do around this critical section? Anybody? It is not a difficult problem. I think people can guess it. It should not be difficult. Yeah. So this is saying, oh, lock and unlock. Okay. So yeah, you'll have to put lock and unlock around this. So we we have used a mutex variable lock. So we will you call lock on that variable and unlock around here, because this will be a critical section part. Should we call? For sleeping, what should we call? For putting itself to wait, we can use the condition variable. Condition underscore wait, good. So the code is here. We will use lock and unlock around this to make it all atomic. Both in post and wait, we will do that thing so that it happens in atomic fashion. And we are going to basically use condition underscore wait. And how do we use this? We pass a condition variable as well as the lock variable. So remember, wait condition variable wait takes both the condition variable as well as the lock, which it assumes it has been already acquired. And the condition is the same, that it has to check while this value is less than equal to 0, it will put itself to sleep. If not, it will decrement the semaphore value and release the lock. Similarly, what should happen in post operation? What should happen in post operation? Post operation should increment the value and then wake a single waiter. Yes, good. So it should first decrement the value and then call signal of on the condition variable. So it should be it should increment the value, not decrement the value, because post operation has to increment it. The wait operation decrements it. So it will first increment the value, then call signal function on the condition variable. So it will wake up any of the thread which was waiting on this, and it will release the lock. So once it has released the lock, the thread which was woken up, it will be able to reacquire the lock before it comes out of the wait function. So this way you can make a semaphore using locks and condition variables. I hope that is clear. Anybody has not understood if this code, let me clear it at this point itself. Please ask if somebody is not clear. So Vanshika is asking, sir, why is there no condition check in post for S value? Yeah, because the semantics of the post operation is this: it does not check anything. Whenever post is called, it has to simply increment the value and wake up a single waiter. So that is how post should be implemented. So that's why what we are doing here, we are just incrementing the value and then waking up a single waiter. So there is no condition check required here. What condition check do you want to put here? Do you think there should be any condition check here? So there is no max value for S value. Yeah. So yeah, there is no max value for S value. So it is an integer value. So we hope it can at least take, it will have 4 bytes or whatever, and it can at least take very large value. So there is no upper bound. So again, until unless we are using a billions of threads, hopefully the overflow condition and that will not worry. So we are not worrying about that here. So yeah, though there is no max value here, you can allow the value of the semaphore to go to any number. So that's why it has more power than a single mutex lock. Mutex lock, if you remember, if you are using semaphore as a lock, then that will allow only 0 and 1 value. It will not allow beyond 1, because it will basically, but a general semaphore can go beyond 1. So that's why sometimes some book call it counting semaphore. So when the value of semaphore goes beyond 1, it is called counting semaphore. And when it is being used just as a binary semaphore or as a lock, as a lock, then they call it as a binary semaphore. Now if you want to build a condition variable using semaphore only, it is slightly more tricky. I have shown here one possible attempt. Can you see this and tell whether it is right or wrong? So we are using a semaphore variable to make a condition variable, let us say a condition variable structure. And initialization we can do with 0. Let us say 0. We can think whether it should be something 0 more other than 0 or not. For signal operation, the condition signal, signal operation on condition signal has to wake up a sleeping thread. So for that purpose, we can use a post operation. And for wait operation condition variable, we will use a mutex as well as a condition variable here. So this will basically so this assumes that lock is held. Whenever we call wait, we assume that lock is held. So basically we'll first release the lock, and because we have to go to sleep on wait operation, generally you go to sleep. So before going to sleep, you first release the lock and then call a wait operation on this using the semaphore function on the semaphore variable of this condition variable. And then when somebody will be waken up from wait, it will reacquire the lock using mutex lock. It will grab the lock before returning. So does it fulfills the semantics of the wait and signal operation of condition variable, or is there something problem here? So I'll give 1 or 2 minutes to think over it, whether this will work properly or there may be a problem here. So is it right or wrong? Is this implementation right or wrong? This is wrong. Can anybody tell me why it is wrong? It does not properly implements the signal and wait operation of condition variable. Of course, as I said, this has no practical utility because you are never going to make a condition variable using semaphore. But we are just trying to show that these are equivalent. So we are saying that semaphore has the power of both condition variable as well as lock. So ideally, we should be able to, if we want to mimic a condition variable using a semaphore, we should be able to do it using the semaphore variable and its operations. So if you want to do it, can we do it this way? And as I say that this looks superficially right, but actually it is wrong implementation. Can anybody guess what problem is here?
Maybe after mutex unlock.
What problem will that cause?
Like after mutex unlock, suppose if like something like context switch happens. So like now it's unlocked, right? That M variable, like the mutex. So maybe if it goes and acquires a lock again somewhere else, or maybe no, I'm not sure. Sorry.
Okay. That will not be problem because anyhow, eventually, whenever it comes back, he will be put to sleep. The problem that is here is, see, whenever we call a signal operation on condition variable, it wakes up a sleeping thread. If there is none, it does not do anything. Basically, it just returns. Basically, there is no, basically that signal operation goes waste kind of thing. But here, when we doing a sem underscore post operation, it is incrementing the value of the semaphore. So this, whenever we do a post operation, it does an increment operation also on the state where it increments the value and simultaneously wakes up a sleeping thread if any. So that part is right there, but this additional part will have a problem. It is see, condition variable does not have any state, so it does not stores. If anything is, if signal operation is waste, it gets wasted. It won't store that thing in some state variable. But semaphore has a state variable value. So whenever we're calling post operation, it is incrementing that value, and that increment will cause a problem later on, because once it has incremented and there was no thread sleeping, then when the next thread comes up and calls wait, that increment value will basically not let it wait. It will allow it to move forward. So that signal operation is not really rightly implemented, because the side effect is happening here, and that is the problem here. I hope you got the idea. Basically, it is the so. Is it clear, or should I go over it again? Anybody wants me to go again? Okay. So what I said, see, a condition variable is a much less powerful primitive than a semaphore. Condition variable does not have any state. It has only a post and wait operation. Wait operation basically makes it wait, irrespective of it does not have a state variable. So whenever you call it wait, it will wait on the queue, and the signal operation will wake up a thread on if there is any thread already waiting. If there is none of the thread waiting, then that signal operation will have no effect. Strictly for a condition variable, that signal operation should be just a spurious operation. It should not have any effect. But here the problem is, because we are using a semaphore to build this signal operation, and whenever we are doing a semaphore post operation, it not only wakes up the sleeping thread but also increments the value. That is what, see, remember what is what we are not only signaling the condition variable, but also we are incrementing the value. So this is an additional thing that is happening in the post operation. What we ideally wanted, we just wanted to do this signal, but in the post operation, this this additional state variable is also getting modified. So when this is getting modified, that will have a problem, because when a subsequent wait operation comes, when another thread may call a wait operation, if then basically that, because that state was modified, that will be a problem. So it will probably it will not wait. Next time when a wait operation comes, its value would have already been incremented to 1, so it will not wait. So that is the problem that can happen. Ideally, that should not happen for a condition variable. So condition variable should not change the state in any way. But if you are using simple post and wait operation using semaphore, it is incrementing the state also. So that is a little subtle thing. You have to think over it again maybe. It's not very important for us right now. Just wanted to show. So it's little hard to do it right. How to do it right? We are not going to even discuss the solution, because it's a little hard to do it if you want to do it. There are some research attempts to do it to prove that these are you can actually do it if you want to do it, but it has no practical utility. So that's why we are not going to discuss that in detail here. If somebody is interested, you can open this PDF link and find the solution. So it will be a little complex to discuss here, but what we will discuss is we'll revisit some problem that we used using locks and condition variable, like the producer consumer problem, and see how we can implement using semaphores. And then probably we'll also discuss some other concurrency problems using semaphore itself, and see how they can be solved using semaphore. So let us first revisit producer consumer problem, which we have already solved using locks and condition variable. And again, we'll start with the simplest case. We'll assume first only one producer and one consumer, and we have just one buffer, shared buffer with just one slot, with just one element. So remember our requirement, consumer should wait for producer to fill the buffer. So unless the producer fills that buffer, consumer should wait. And similarly, producer should wait until unless consumer empties that buffer. So extra requirements that we need to ensure. And we use two condition variable, remember, to implement our producer consumer synchronization. So you can guess that probably we'll also need two semaphores also to do the same thing here. So we can use an empty buffer semaphore and a full buffer semaphore. Okay, so empty buffer will be used by producer, because producer has to wait for the consumer to empty the buffer. So until unless the buffer is empty, probably the producer will have to, or non-empty, probably the so until the buffer is basically not filled basically, or when the buffer is fully filled, it has to wait, and whenever so it has to wait till buffer is empty. Not be fully empty, but at least there should be some. In this case, because there is only one element, so then we can say it has to be empty. So producer must wait till the buffer is empty, and similarly consumer must wait till the buffer is full. So we are using an empty buffer. So the naming is just according to that requirement. You can use any name. So we are using one buffer, one semaphore named empty buffer, and one semaphore naming full buffer. And let us say for simplicity, we are using a producer code like this and consumer code like this. So producer is going to basically try to fill a value into the buffer, and consumer is trying to retrieve the value from the buffer. And we need synchronization operations around this critical section. So what should we do? And we have to also think how to initialize these semaphores. So as you can guess, we have to do post operation, and we are using empty buffer for the producer and full buffer for the consumer. So empty buffer semaphore is for producer, so producer will wait till the buffer is empty, and if it is not empty, then it will if it is empty, then it will fill the value in the buffer, and after that it will give a post operation. But the post operation will be on the full buffer, because as we said, the signaling.
Shouldn't it be the other way around?
That depends on what you are thinking about empty buffer and full buffer. So yeah, I think the name may little bit confuse you, but you have to have one condition semaphore for this and another semaphore for this. So right now I'm using here empty buffer to indicate that basically that the buffer is not empty. So till the buffer is not empty, we will wait, and till the buffer is not full, we will wait here. So you can use your whatever naming is more appropriate for you. You can use a name, but that doesn't matter ultimately in the final sense. It is just a naming, relative naming. So I am using probably this naming from the Remji's book itself. So I can guess probably there is some confusion on the name that depends on what meaning you associate with that semaphore variable. But the thing is that here we have one semaphore for producer and one semaphore for consumer. So producer is going to wait on one semaphore, and it is going to post on the other semaphore, because that semaphore is being waited by the consumer. Similarly, consumer is going to wait on the other semaphore, and it is going to post on the semaphore on which the producer is waiting, because that is what we saw in the previous when we discussed using condition variable. Our signaling has to be directed. The producer should signal to the consumer to continue, and consumer should signal the producer to continue if they are waiting. So that I hope you can agree with. So the thing is, now what should we initialize this thing? If this is the code, let us say, what value should empty buffer be initialized, and what value should full buffer be initialized to?
1 and 0.
So empty buffer should be given 1 and full buffer should be given 0. So why do you say that?
So because initially consumer shouldn't run. Basically, you have to first run the producer and then the consumer, right?
Right.
So the full buffer should wait.
Correct.
And the empty buffer should run.
So that was the rule of thumb. We said that soon after initialization, we have to see how many resources we are willing to give away. So are we willing to allow any of the consumer thread to run immediately? No, we want to wait. None of the consumer should run. Yes, right now there is only one consumer, so anyhow, so that should be 0. But producer, we are willing to allow the producer to run. So producer should be made 1, so that producer can run. and consumer should wait. So I think that was clear to everybody. So let us take the scenario of circular buffer. So now we have not just one value, but we have a circular buffer of size n. Still, will consider only single consumer and single producer, and try to modify this code little bit. So instead of just having one value, now we have a, let us say, an array of buffer, and we are using index I for producer and index j for consumer. So earlier we were using in and out, so these are just different names now, I and j. So producer tries to fill a value at I and then increments I plus 1 mod of n. Similarly, consumer retrieves value from j and increments j by 1 and mod n, because it is a circular buffer. And we are protecting, because this is your critical section part of the code. These two are this is your critical section part of the code. So we are surrounding it by wait and post operation using the two semaphore value, empty buffer and full buffer. So now in this case, what should we initialize empty buffer to and full buffer to? Still there is one producer and one consumer. Zero, Hardik, 0 for to what? Empty buffer or full buffer? Achha, n and 0. So empty buffer should be n and full buffer should be 0. Any other option? Anybody? So Hardik, can you explain why? Will you try to justify? Your answer is correct. Since n time allowed initially. Yeah, so producer can run n times because there are n elements, n slots available initially. So producer can be allowed to execute this loop n times. So empty buffer can be initialized to n. And consumer scenario remains the same. Consumer should not run even once unless producer runs. So when producer runs once, it will post on full buffer and it will increment the count. So then only consumer should run. So you are right in thinking producer can run n times, consumer can run 0 times initially, soon after initialization. So I think that means you are getting the rule of initialization now. So this will work for if there is single producer and single consumer. Now let us say if there are multiple producers and multiple consumers, and we have a circular buffer of size n. Now will that same code will work, or do we need to modify it slightly? Will this code work or no? If there are multiple producer and multiple consumers. If no, why do you think so? And if yes, also, why do you think so? So answer is no, it won't work. There is something wrong now. Why do you think it won't work? That is already now there are n producers, let us say, may not be n, some arbitrary number of producers. We have multiple producers and multiple consumers. No mutual exclusion required for producer. No, your answer is no, and the reason is mutual exclusion is required for producer. And what about consumer? Chaudhary Amit Singh? For consumer, does mutual exclusion required or not? I think you are getting the point. So consumer, both for producer and consumer, mutual exclusion is required, because now these in and out variable, in and I and j variable, these are shared among producers. I is shared among producers and j is shared among consumers. Each producer will try to increment I value and each consumer will try to modify the j value. So we need mutual exclusion for this purpose amongst producers. So there should be a mutual exclusion among producer and there should be mutual exclusion amongst consumer. So there is a data race among producer and there is a data race among consumers. Is there a data race between producer and consumer also? So among producer and producer, that there is a data race. Among consumer there is a data race. Is there a data race amongst producer and consumer? So I hope you could understand that among among multiple producers there is a data race, because each producer is going to modify this I. Similarly, among consumers there is a data race because each consumer is modifying j. But is there a data race kind of thing between producer and consumer? Remember earlier when we implemented this using condition variable, we used a additional variable called counter or num underscore fills number to keep track of how many slots are filled, isn't it? So that we can check whether it's empty or full. But in this case for semaphores, we did not need that variable. Why? In this case we are not using any counter. Why? When we were using condition variable to synchronize producer and consumers, we had to explicitly use a count variable to check our empty condition and full condition. Now we are not needing this count variable or a counter, any counter. Why? Because semaphore itself has that count inside it. Na? Our semaphore itself, empty buffer itself, is initialized to n and full buffer is initialized to 0. So they themselves are keeping track of that count. So whenever a producer comes inside, it decrements this n and so on. So the tracking of this is being done by semaphore itself, because semaphore has that it can track state. It has a state variable which is incremented and decremented. So because we are using a semaphore, now we didn't explicitly needed a count variable for this implementation. So earlier when the count was being modified by both producer and consumer, both consumer was incrementing the count and consumer was decrementing the count. So in that case, there was a data race among producer and consumer earlier, but now there is no data race as such here between producer and consumer, because as such between producer and consumer, you can say that the queue itself is shared, buffer is being shared. So now it depends on how this buffer is being maintained. If it is a simple array data structure, probably then there is no problem, there is no data race between producer and consumer. But if this buffer, if this queue is being maintained, or if this queue is being maintained using a more complicated data structure like linked list or some more sophisticated data structure, then there is a possibility that there may be by trying to read from that buffer or trying to, then basically for example, if you are using a linked list, then you won't be just incrementing a count here. You will be basically changing the pointers after adding a node or after deleting a node from the linked list. So you are modifying the linked list itself. And if linked list is common between producer and consumer, in that case, there will be a data race among producer and consumer also. So that was just a little side point here. If you have not understood right now, it doesn't matter so much. We'll just talk again. But at least you are sure that here data race is between producer and between consumer and consumer. So what should we do? We will need a lock.
Make it a critical section.
Yeah, so critical section has to be. So right now we are using empty buffer and full buffer for signaling purpose. We are not as such using it for as a mutex, as a log. So we can try to use another semaphore variable or a lock variable around this critical section. So one solution is this. So we can put everything. This part of the code was we had seen earlier. So we can surround it using mutex lock. So either we can use log, or if you just want to use semaphore, as we have seen, we can use a semaphore also as a log. So we can use a mutex underscore p, which will initialize it to basically 1. So it will become a binary. It will act as a log, and we'll release it that log after this. And similarly for consumers also, we will use another semaphore, which will also be initialized to 1 initially, and so that it will allows only at the max only one consumer thread to go inside and modify the queue. So as I said, it will work if you are using a simple buffer, a simple array based buffer. But if there is some other data structure like linked list and all that, then there is a possibility of a data race happening amongst producer and consumer also. So in that case, you have to use a common variable for both producer and consumer. So in that case, you will have to use a single mutex variable for both producer and consumer, so that you allow only either a producer or a consumer to basically either insert or delete from the queue. And this is a solution which you will see most of the time in all the books, including Remji's book also talks this. Remji's book also does not talk about this solution. I was a little bit surprised why none of the book talk about this solution. So although everybody in the book, everybody talks about simple array based buffer only, but the actual solution which is given in all the books across any operating system book is they use a common mutex variable for both producer and consumer. And it led me to little bit wonder why they use using a single mutex variable when there is a no data race amongst producer and consumer. Because remember, if you are using a same mutex variable for both producer and consumer, it is basically reducing your degree of concurrency. So you cannot allow producer and consumer to run parallelly. Either a producer will run or a consumer will run. But if you had the previous solution, you had a separate mutex for producer and separate mutex for consumer. Producer and consumers can run concurrently, so it will have a higher degree of concurrency. So if you are using an array-based buffer, probably this will be a better solution than using a common mutex variable. But if you are using a more complicated data structure like linked list, then it is preferable to use a common mutex variable for both producer and consumer. So for correct, because first criteria is to have correct code. Your code should not mess up. Then the second criteria is performance. It's degree of concurrency and all things. So most of the book talk about this solution only. None of the book talks about solution. But I think my reasoning is correct, and I hope you will all agree with that. So they assume that there is a data race between producer and consumer also possible in general scenario, and which is true if we are using a more complex queue between producer and consumer. Okay, this is also not the right solution. There is still one problem with this. But whatever we have discussed till this point, is it clear, or anybody has a doubt? Whatever I said, does it make sense, or it is going above the head? I hope it should. Till now, it should not go above the head. We are going very systematically, hopefully. So there is still some problem here. Can you tell what is the problem? If you are using a common mutex variable for both producer and consumer, that will cause a problem. Deadlock. Good. Why? So Amit Singh Chaudhary, can you explain why there will be a deadlock? You can speak out if your mic is okay. Consumer waits for production and so what schedule will cause deadlock? And producer waits for mutex lock held by consumer. Yeah, good. So consider scenario if consumer runs first. If initially the buffer is empty, so first consumer runs, it acquires the mutex lock. So it runs this part, then it waits on full buffer. Now because producer has not yet run, so buffer will be empty. So consumer will be put to sleep. So now producer gets a chance to run. It can fill the slot and can give signal to the consumer. But problem is before it tries to fill, it will first try to acquire the lock, but the lock is already held by the consumer. So, and the consumer is already sleeping. A sad state of affair now. Consumer is already sleeping. Consumer is not going to release mutex, and producer is waiting for mutex. And producer can signal consumer, but before it signals, it is basically getting held at the mutex itself. So there is a deadlock situation. Producer is waiting for consumer, and consumer is waiting for producer. So producer, so there is a, I hope you can understand the scenario. So I've just written it down in this slide. Consumer acquires the mutex, calls sem_wait, and it is blocked, but it is still holding the mutex. Producer calls sem_wait on the mutex, and it has to wait because it is being held by consumer. So it's a classic deadlock scenario. And so what we can do basically, we can this mutex thing can be done instead of doing before empty, but before checking this condition, we can do this mutex lock after this. So we can basically, because our real part that we were trying to protect was this modification of the queue. So this is our actual critical section part. So let us have mutex, fine-grained mutex just around that critical section part, rather than having a broad critical section even before checking the condition. So let us have mutex just around this, and similarly here we have mutex just around this. So now that deadlock problem will not occur, because even if consumer tries to run first, it will get held here itself. It will not get a chance to acquire the mutex. So I hope this will be a working solution. This is the actual working solution, which is there in the book. Anybody has any doubt on this can ask now. So I don't want to, anybody wants to ask a question here before we move to the next problem? We don't have a lot of time here, so I don't want to discuss the next problem today. We'll discuss in the next class. Is it making sense, or it is becoming more complicated? I hope it is not getting too complicated. I've tried to create slides in such a way that we have tried to put first non-working solutions so that you become clear what is the importance of each statement and in which order. So everything is very important. There are only 4 or 5 lines. So in this concurrency codes, you will have to only write maximum 4 or 5 lines of code for the concurrency purpose. And you have to be basically what you initialize with, where do you put that wait or post operations, everything will matter. So purposely in the slides we have started from wrong ordering or insufficient use of the lock variable or semaphore variables to show the importance of each statement and the order in which they are being done, so that everything is clear why exactly this way and not any other way. So I hope this should the good thing is that once you know this pattern now, so any producer consumer scenario if you come across, you can blindly go for this pattern. You don't have to now rethink all the corner cases because we have already think for these conditions. Until unless your problem poses an additional constraint, only for that additional constraint probably you may have to look think little bit more. But for just for producer consumer constraint that we talked about, this logic will be same, it will remain same across any problem that you use. So the assignment that we are going to release is going to be just a producer consumer problem only. So we are thinking to release a assignment on web server, multi-threaded web server. So it is a classic producer consumer scenario, but concurrency part of the code is not much as such. You will be able to implement it. We have already shared some code, producer consumer code we have already shared in your practice lab. But it will have some other parts. You will have to schedule the threads. So you will have to implement some kind of a scheduling in that there like shortest job first kind of thing. So there will be a scheduling part to that thing and a concurrency part to that assignment. We are still finalizing, probably 1 or 2 days we will release it, the assignment. And you can start working on it immediately because whatever we have discussed is sufficient now. You can use semaphore, you can use condition variable, you can use lock, any of the concurrency things that we have discussed, you are free to use. Only thing is that we will be sharing you a basic single threaded, basically a sequential web server program, and it will be using some socket programming also. So I assume that because you have already gone through web programming courses, advanced web programming courses in the last semester, where socket programming was part of that. So I was under the impression we were already studied it. But I came to know from Sia that probably it was not discussed in the class, only notes. So we will be giving you comments. We'll be putting comments in the code, everything, so that you understand what it is. But you may have to little bit refresh a little bit about the functions of socket programming, just to understand a normal web server, how it runs basically using sockets and all that. But your part will be just to add this concurrency around that, and among multiple client requests do some kind of a scheduling. So the details will be shared with you in 1 or 2 days. And tomorrow we'll start with the next problem, basically kind of a reader writer problem, which is slightly different than the producer consumer problem. The thing here is that if you are reading, if there are multiple threads which are either reading or writing from a shared resource. So if there is a reader, you can only allow one writer to progress. If there is any writer there, then other readers or other writers have to wait, or there can be many readers at a time. So in the critical section, you can allow many readers because readers are not going to update or modify the shared resource. So it's a slightly different than a producer consumer problem, and we'll see how this can be implemented in the next class.